Hello everyone. Today I'll be reading a passage out of the book The Hobbit, page 252 to 253. "Halt," called Gandalf, who appeared suddenly and stood alone, with arms uplifted between the advancing dwarves and the ranks awaiting them. "Halt," he called in a voice like thunder, and his stuff blazed forth with a flash like the lightning. "Dread has come upon you all. Alas, has become more swiftly than I guessed. The goblins are upon you. Bolg of the North is coming. O Dane, whose father you slew in Moria. Behold, the bats are above this army like a sea of locusts. They ride upon wolves, and wargs are in their train." Amazement and confusion fell upon them all, even as Gandalf had been speaking. The darkness grew. The dwarves halted and gazed at the sky. The elves cried out with many voices. "Come," called Gandalf. "There is yet time for counsel. Let Dane, son of Nain, come swiftly to us." So began a battle that none had expected, and it was called the Battle of the Five Armies, and it was very terrible. Upon one side were the goblins and the wild wolves, and upon the other were elves and men and dwarves. This is how it fell out. Ever since the fall of the great goblin of the Misty Mountains, the hatred of their race for the dwarves had been rekindled a fury. Messengers had passed to and fro between all their cities, colonies, and strongholds, for they resolved now to win the dominion of the north. Tidings they had gathered in secret ways, and in all the mountains there was a forging and an arming. Then they marched and gathered by hill and valley, going ever by tunnel or under dark, until around and beneath the great mountain, Gundabad of the north, where was their capital, a vast host was assembled ready to sweep down in time of the storm, unawares upon the south. Then they learned of the death of Smaug, and joy was in their hearts, and they hastened night after night through the mountains, and came thus at last on a sudden from the north, hard on the heels of Dane. Not even the ravens knew of their coming until they came out in the broken lands, which divided the lonely mountains from the hills behind. How much Gandalf knew cannot be said, but it is plain that he had not expected this sudden assault. This is the plan that he made in council with the Elf King and with Bard and with Dane, for the Dwarf Lord now joined them. The goblins were the foes of all, and at their coming all other quarrels were forgotten. Their only hope was to lure the goblins into the valley between the arms of the mountain, and themselves to man the great spurs that struck south and east. Yet this would be perilous, if the goblins were in sufficient numbers to overrun the mountains itself, and so attack them also from behind and above. But there was no time to make any other plan, or to summon any help. So, this book I read in about, I want to say, freshman year of high school. And this entire book just spoke to me. I absolutely love reading these types of books. I love reading fiction and magic and just like all of that stuff. And reading this book opened a whole new world for me. This is what got me into reading in the first place. And I just for some reason fell in love with this book. I love the way that it speaks. I love all the words that the author uses. If any of you have watched any of the movies, I promise you it does not do any good like the book does. It's so vivid, especially if you have a wide imagination, just to see everything in your head as you read all the excerpts, especially if any of you have seen the movie, the part with the dragon, that in the book was so amazing. And there was also a part in the movie where they didn't really go over it, but it was the part where with the giant spiders, and there was even rivers on the journey, a river on the journey that put you basically to sleep, and for some reason this story has just stuck with me ever since I first read it. And I was so into it, I read it at school and other things, and I don't know, it's such an amazing book. If you have the time to pick it up, please, I promise you, the movies don't do this justice. Have a great day, and I promise you, it's such an amazing book.